All right, guys, today what we're going to do is we're going to start talking about the poem by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, Paul Revere's Ride. What we're going to do today is we are going to talk about the importance of Paul Revere's Ride and how it was a very pivotal moment that led to the American Revolution, or leading up to the American Revolution. This is also going to help you a little bit when it gets time to write your CWTs on whether or not you believe that the colonists were justified in declaring their independence and fighting the Revolutionary War. Okay? What I want you to do is everybody, if you have one, go ahead and get a highlighter out. If you do not have a highlighter, raise your hand and we will get you one. Okay. JB, can you come pass these out to people that have their hands up, and then we'll see how many more we need after that? And then I want the runners to come get a copy of this for your team. Let me know how many's on your team when you come up here. I'll get some more. If he didn't get you one, just when we sit back down after we get these done, I'll get some more. Y'all have two. Who's y'all's runners? Can you bring one to Reagan, one or two? All right, so how many more people need highlighters? One, two, three, 4, 5, 6, 7. I don't know if I have 7 more. Let's see. Who else is still not have one? Annabeth and Chloe. You need one too. There's one on your desk. Oh, you didn't get one for yourself? So we need 2 more highlighters. All right, y'all make sure I get these back. Miss Kim and I need to keep our highlighters, okay? You're welcome. All right, so the first thing that we're going to do, guys, is we're going to watch a video. I found a video because this poem is a little lengthy. It tends to get a little, you might get lost in it. So this video is kind of fun. It's got some suspenseful music in it, and it's going to tell us the poem of Paul Revere's Ride. Once we finish listening to the poem, then we're going to go back through and we're going to go through each one of the poems, okay, and talk about it. So right now, I want you all to kind of follow along with your poem as they're reading it to us on here, okay?
Of the midnight ride of Paul Revere on the 18th of April.
Okay, now what we're going to do, guys, is we're now going to look at the poem, and we are going to go through it, and we are going to look at it like stanza by stanza. Who knows what a stanza is when it comes to a poem? What you got, Abigail?
It's basically like a paragraph.
Kind of a paragraph. So what's included in that paragraph or in that stanza? What are those called? What do we call those? What will we call these? Look out to the side. They're kind of numbered, aren't they? What do you think we call this? Lines. Very good. So a stanza is a group of lines in a poem. Stanza is the group of lines in a poem. Okay? Everybody got that? All right, now we're going to start looking at it, and we're going to talk about it, guys. We're going to go through, maybe find some unfamiliar words that we're not sure about. We may find a little bit of figurative language in here that we're going to talk about. We're also going to talk about, like, some of the moods that are set. What kind of mood the wording in this tells us, okay? So let's get our highlighters and our pencils. Now, remember, when y'all are highlighting, highlight what I highlight. Any notes that you're taking, you want to take your notes in your pencils, okay? Because you can use these on the test, and when you use these, if you have written in highlighter, it's going to be very hard for y'all to read it, okay? So make sure any notes that we take, we do with a pencil. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, you can write your name on it. You actually have a copy of this in your binder as well. But we wanted to do this one to kind of help you designate which stanzas, because a lot of times in poetry, when there's questions asked, it may say, let's look at stanza 3, line 19. So you want to be able to find that stanza and that line, and then you know where we're looking, okay? So that's why it's always important to understand what the stanza is and what the lines are within the stanza, okay? So we're going to first look at stanza 1, and I'm going to read it to you. It says, listen, my children, and you shall hear of the midnight ride of Paul Revere. On the 18th of April in 75, hardly a man is now alive who remembers that famous day and year. I want to highlight midnight ride. What does midnight ride tell us? Raise your hands. Presley. That he's riding at midnight. When is midnight? 12 o'clock. Is that AM or PM?
PM.
What is it? AM. Good job. So let's just make a little note here that means it's the middle of the night. Real quick before we go any further, I do want to point out, guys, that this poem was written in 1860. What year was Paul Revere's ride? Somebody raise your hand and tell me when Paul Revere's ride was. What year? Sawyer.
1735.
No, not 1735. You were close. That's the year he was born. So you were on the right track. But what year was the ride, Skylar?
1773.
No, you're getting closer. One more chance. Who's going to get it? Evan?
1775.
1775. So guys, this poem was written almost 100 years later. Okay? This was written almost 100 years later. And I want you to keep in mind, there are going to be some differences in this from what you've already learned about Paul Revere's ride. Okay? So be paying close attention to some things that may be a little different. I also want you to highlight right here where it says, hardly a man is now alive who remembers that famous day and year. Who can tell me what Longfellow's telling us right here? Hardly a man is now alive who remembers that famous day and year. Give me somebody besides Presley and Skylar. Who else wants to answer that? Annabeth, what's he saying right there? That's okay. That's okay. Abigail?
Like, when does anyone remember when he was born? Like, the Bible being like Paul Revere for town for everybody.
Okay. I kind of like where you're going with, but that's not quite what he's saying here. Emmett?
Hardly remembered?
Okay. It says, hardly a man is now alive who remembers that famous day and year. I think they're telling us that there's nobody alive today that was there that can remember this actually happening and was there to remember it. Okay? Because this was like, how long ago? Thousands of years, right? A couple thousand, maybe 1,000. So there's nobody living today that was alive, that was alive back then. So it was 100 years. So, I mean, there's nobody alive still that remembers that. Okay? Not by first-hand account, that's for sure. Okay? So let's make a note that this means no one alive remembers this. All right, now we're going to move on to stanza 2, and let's take a look at what it says. He said to his friend, if the British march by land or sea from the town tonight, hang a lantern aloft in the belfry arch of the North Church Tower as a signal light. So let's highlight the belfry arch and of the North Church Tower. And then we're going to do 1 if by land and 2 if by sea. Who remembers what the belfry arch is? Raise your hand if you remember. Emmett? And what is there? What's in the belfry arch?
The bell.
The bells. Very good. So the belfry arch is where the bells are or hang. Now, of the North Church Tower, the one thing I want to let you guys know about this, and this isn't really anything necessarily about the ride, but it's just some really cool information. This church is still standing today. It is the oldest church in Boston, and it is now considered a national landmark. Miss Kim told us earlier today that we have a couple of teachers here that actually went to this church and was able to tour the church as well as Paul Revere's home. They did get some pictures. So Miss Kim says that if we can get everything done and get this together, we may be able to look at some of those pictures and might even pull up the Google Earth satellite and see if we can go look at it right now. So we may do that at some point, before the week is over or before we finish this unit, okay? All right. Now, again, I want you to highlight where it says 1 if by land and 2 if by sea. Why is that important? Hayden?
It tells them if they're on the land, it's going to be one big room. But if it's them in the sea, it's going to be a big room.
I like where you're going with that. So basically, who wants to add a little bit to that? Annabeth, what you want to add to it? Well, there's going to be a lot of people, but what is the most important thing when we're hanging there? Either 1 light or 2 lanterns? Abigail?
That means 1 light if the people were coming by land, and 2 if they were coming by.
That's right. If the soldiers are coming in by land, there's 1 light. That's one way you have to warn, right? Because if they don't know which way they're coming, you can warn them, but they can still get surprised. Because you may be expecting them to come by land, but if they come by sea, you're looking in a whole nother direction, right? So this is a way for us to know, or them to know which way they were coming from so that the colonists could be more prepared. Good job, though, guys. All right, let's keep going. And I on the opposite shore will be ready to ride and spread the alarm through every Middlesex village and farm for the country folk to be up and to arm. So he needs to know, right? And he just told us he's going to be on the shore on the other side, right? What's he watching for on the shore?
The soldiers.
What's he watching for, Katie? But what he's on the other shore. What is he looking for? Skylar? Listen, now I want, let's see, group leaders to pick those up and bring them to me. Hey, listen, make sure your names are on them. No, all I want is the sequencing paper. Make sure your names are on them. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. A lot of talking. This is a lot of talking during transition, and you guys know better. I'm not sure why we're still talking. I don't think that we have like that. That's perfect. Thank you. All right, guys, y'all need to hang on to this poem because we are going to continue and go over the remaining stanzas and make some annotations on those as well. And then we will continue on. There was a little quiz on the back of this. Once we finish the poem, we'll probably go back and complete this little small quiz, and that may be worth 10 points. Okay? All right. Go ahead and put those up, and then I want the runners to come get the iNotebooks.